my friend Ivica Milaric. Ivica, how are you doing right now with everything going on?
Doing great. We're in lockdown here in Serbia. We're currently on day 2 out of the complete and total lockdown for the weekend. It's Orthodox Easter here, so we have to stay indoors for 3 days straight. That's a kind of a test for not going insane, but so far pretty good. Me and the family. No complaints in having in mind that this is 2020 and it's the apocalypse. So besides that, pretty good.
Yeah, happy Easter if you celebrate, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Forgot about
Thank
that.
you.
So I want to kind of jump into some of the things that you do. One of the things that I found very interesting about you is that you have you're like this polyhyphenate. You are a psychologist, but you are also a video game designer, a game designer. How do those two things go hand in hand? How did you wind up doing both of those?
Yeah, well, the biggest friend for my numerous career choices is the employment situation in the former Yugoslavian republics, which is Serbia included. So when I was enrolling in university, it was back in 2002, we had a really objective staff, and our professors were super honest, and they were like, this is you'll get a lot of knowledge from this, but chances are you won't go get to work in your field. So kind of have some alternatives ready. Yeah, exactly. They were honest, and it was a bit weird back then, but now I'm super thankful for that because there's a lot of us in Serbia, and basically in Balkans, in all former Yugoslavian republics, Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia. Everybody has a similar situation because it's an interesting university to go through. You learn a lot of stuff. Psychology is interesting, right? And to be honest, it's not really difficult. So you need kind of only to yeah, it's true. I mean, you need to apply yourself. You don't get to those situations when you don't get something, like I just can't understand it. It's just basically learning. It's a thing that most people can finish pretty easily. But still, it's a regular university degree, and you get a lot of cool things from it if you apply yourself. When I finished, I started working in mass media, actually. I had a lot of radio shows about movies when I was in university, and I wanted to continue working in media, but it was horrible back then. You couldn't even find a regular job, a steady job. The pay was terrible. So thanks to my friend, Ivan, I found work in a gaming company called Madhead Games, where I'm still employed and still work as a game designer. I had a lot of background in gaming. I had a lot of background in writing. I used to and still write a lot, mostly fiction. So science fiction, slipstream fiction. I started in high school. I was really into it in Serbian. I even got published a little bit. So it was easy to me kind of to move into gaming as a narrative designer, also by being a psychologist. And an additional weirder thing is that I worked a lot in hospital settings. I worked for more than 2 years as a psychologist, like white coat and everything. And I simply couldn't find a regular job in Serbia at that point. So I had to think of alternatives. And gaming was one of them.
You mentioned that you've written a lot. You've written your whole life. You have, I believe it's 3 books out. Is that correct?
4. 4.
4.
Yeah.
Because I know there are, and 2 of them I believe are psychology focused. One is using psychology to stop procrastinating.
Yeah.
And the other I believe was the pursuit of micro success.
Exactly. Yeah, my latest one. Yeah.
Is that correct?
Correct.
So that's the 4th one. So tell me about that. What is the pursuit of micro success?
So when I was a kid, like in early 2000s, I started to become fascinating with the idea of kind of working online, but not full time, but by making that's called today like side gigs, like small ventures that can produce some kind of money for you, but nothing major, nothing huge. For me, that was trying to make blogs and websites I started maybe around 2006. And I really got hooked into it. So it was something that I really loved doing, even though it was really a bad source of funding for me. It earned not between nothing and really little. And I continued to do that throughout the years. Even the books are kind of the version on that kind of idea. So micro success in this sense is something that I call micro ventures. So it's a super small business setup, basically a one-person deal, where you create any kind of online super small business that you can maintain through really limited effort. So in the book I talk about basically 4 to 5 hours max per week, but you do it rain or shine, snow or hail or whatever happens, you give that 5 for whatever time you want, give that time to your venture, your micro venture, and I believe that eventually it will start making you money. It can be minuscule amounts. So we have a different setup here because you're in the US, and I'm guessing most of your audience as well. But for example, in Serbia, an average salary is around, let's say, $500 USD. So if you can make something that earns you $50 per month, it's something that isn't a minuscule sum here. It's at least like 2 really nice dinner outings for 2. And I believe that through this micro ventures, you can earn that money, but also you can expand your skill set. So it's kind of a roundabout way of making yourself learn things. But being that I'm not a big fan of like taking online courses, I'm more into like doing things and then reverse engineer learning through it. Not always. I don't want to say like never use online courses, but I think that a lot of people go for them and then they kind of fizzle out. They want to learn but don't see the point at some moment, and then it just melts away. But if you do already have some kind of a venture, it literally forces you to learn things, kind of through the mere effort of keeping that thing afloat. But also a big thing about the micro ventures, in my perspective and my kind of outlook on it, is that you need to limit your time spent on them, because otherwise you'll burn out. So can I give you an example of what I mean?
Please do, because I was about to ask for one, actually. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's take a podcast. You want to make a podcast. You always dreamed about it. You think it's cool. You have your topic. It can be whatever, literally. Niche or wide. You can talk about politics, or you can talk about collectible Marvel figurines. Action figurines. I'm sorry. So, yeah. Sorry to the action figurine collecting community. No disrespect. And you create that podcast. And you say, okay, I want to see it succeed. I'm aware I won't become, I don't know, a superstar overnight, but I want to see it succeed. And of course, in first few months, maybe even year or 2, you don't succeed. You don't see that kind of a growth, and you don't get a lot of people listening to it. And then you say, okay, I need to push it further. I need to invest more time. I need to do more about it. And you ramp up your effort. And then you still don't get that amount of results, right? Maybe a little better, but you don't get that big push that you subconsciously expect to get. And then you say, screw it. And basically you quit. And all the effort you invested previously, it just fizzles out. It goes away. It's like a dead YouTube channel. I would love to see YouTube, like the service, do kind of a post-mortem of all the channels that were abandoned. It's a huge amount, and they didn't have to be abandoned. Go ahead.
I know I've got at least one that I've abandoned. Yeah, so I think everybody does, right?
Yeah, exactly. I have channels too. I had also movie review channels in Serbian that didn't go anywhere, and I just said, yeah, that's it. I'm out of here. And it might have been a good decision if it took a lot of effort from me and freed up my time for example, my books. But it doesn't have to be that way. And the idea of microventure is, no, stick with it. Keep doing it on the level you're doing it, and eventually you'll find a way to get success out of it. But you need to be also aware of the success you're looking for. If you want to be the biggest podcaster ever, don't even start. I mean, chances of that happening are really small. But if you want to see, yeah, I mean, it sounds terrible, but because that's also a big part of my book, I talk about it. YouTube wants us to make as many channels as we can. They don't care if we drop it. They just want us to continue pushing out content. And that's the moment where we have to kind of appease the corporate gods, but be aware that they also want sacrifices, but they give blessings as well. So it's
What
it's
a fitting Easter story.
yeah, of course, a really positive, nice, and motivational story. Like you're failing, you continue to fail, but maybe a small part of you continues and creates something that gives you $50 per month. It's sold. I mean, everybody's buying the book right now. They love it. It's but no, I'm serious about that in the
Well,
sense. Oh, sorry, continue.
it I was like, I think there's an important message that you have in there, which is figuring out how to restrict the time you put into your passion projects. I'm bad at it. I'm bad at restricting the time I put into work, into my hobbies, into anything. I get obsessive and I keep going and I burn out, just like you said. And I have so many abandoned blogs and YouTube channels and
Of course,
music projects and just one thing after the other that was giving me life at one point, and then I wound up hating it. It's not even that you abandon it; you wind up hating that piece of work that you spent so much time on.
Yeah, it's even worse than abandoning, as you say. It's literally you get something that was a super positive force in your life, which then slowly becomes toxic, and you just want to, like, it's like cursed. You just want it out of your life, not thinking about it. And even when you're not doing anything, you might feel guilty about not doing it. And then when you're doing it at the last phases, why am I even doing it? This is pointless. I'm just wasting my time. So I went through a lot of those projects myself, and the book came about me trying to figure out the projects that didn't have that. For example, I decided to stop writing about movies in Serbian or making YouTube videos about movies in Serbian, and started a blog in English about movies in 2013. And I still keep it going. And it managed to connect. It continues to earn some money. It managed to connect me with really cool people. I interviewed movie makers, saw some really awesome movies, did reviews on them, and it provided me with so much, including money, while at the same time, the whole Serbian movie review division of Ivica provided me with practically no money at all. And for me, money is an important element. I mean, it's something that people kind of, especially in the creative domain, don't like to force when they talk about their efforts, because there's a bit of that Gen X moment in it where we don't want to see ourselves as selling out. Like in the movies from the Generation X season.
No, that's true.
Yeah. The whole selling out, the worst thing ever. I mean, it's disappearing, because if you look like at pop stars today and everything else, that kind of element is gone, even with all kinds of music. But I think that some element of that was in me as well. But as I get older, I realize, no, it's not a conflict of elements. It's not like if you're making money, it's automatically crap, or if you're not making money, it's automatically pure and clean and insightful. It doesn't have to be. It's a false dichotomy. Earn money. You should earn money.
Well, yeah, and it's pay the writer, pay the musician, pay the performer, because they're still working.
Absolutely.
It's a different type of labor, but it's still labor.
No, it's labor for sure. I mean, it's effort, it's time, it's investment of your cognitive capacities, of everything, your experiences, your knowledge. So you should pay the writer, you should pay everyone, and you should get paid. And we should only take a page from the Renaissance artists, the Renaissance period, especially in Europe.
Oh, yeah.
All of those people were a lot about money, and they didn't have any issue at creating for example, Leonardo da Vinci created things that were hundreds of years beyond his era, science, art. He got paid. He was into getting paid, So in today's terms, Leonardo da Vinci would probably have an accountant, and really be mindful of his monetary dealings, even though he personally did end up dying in poverty. But hey,
he probably had fun spending it, right?
yeah, hope so.
It does strike me though. I mean, anyone, I think, the world over who's pursuing anything creatively, it's easy to get dissuaded by not making money on something though, and that is, I think, where it gets difficult, because on the one hand, you have people who are sometimes creating something that's really important to them, or maybe really important to a couple of people, but they're not making anything off of it, or to feel like they're wasting their time or they're spending their wheels. And that's, I mean, how would you advise someone go around that? I mean, is that part of the the 4 or 5 hours a week mentality, or?
I completely get, or I believe that I get what you're saying, and there is a lot of people like that. For me, my advice to them, even though advice is, as they say, as the elves in the Lord of the Rings say, never give advice to anyone. My suggestion would be, put it on your radar. A lot of people want money. Practically everyone wants money, but they almost want to be surprised by it. It's that kind of a stereotypical story of you creating music and not getting $1 from it, and then producer comes around, and next month you're driving a Porsche and having a luxury mansion with an infinite pool. Yeah, if you're gunning for that, that's cool, but be aware of it. But if you're not, just have the money on your radar. And if you do, you'll recognize the opportunities that come around. So, for example, you have a super small community, right? 50 people are interested in things you're making.
Yeah.
You want to see some cash. Create a crowdfunding of some kind. It doesn't matter. You'll probably get $20, but that's a start. I believe that money is like anything else. You need to start small to get to medium size, to get to big, maybe. But starting big is almost impossible. It's statistically an anomaly, And I don't think that you should base your ventures, whatever they might be, around anomalies, around people finding you on the street and saying, "Oh my God, you're the next Eddie Vedder. Here's $1 million for your beautiful acoustic music guitar, singer-songwriter. Nobody saw that in ages." And yeah, it might happen. But if that's your plan, it's fine. And then you should be fine knowing that 1,000 people trying that kind of thing, a 1999 will never see any success. And if those odds are good with you, that's fine. But it's a big risk for me, in my view, psychologically speaking, is putting the blame on the outside world and saying, why didn't they pay me? Well, the question is, why didn't you ask for money? First ask, and then if nobody pays you for whatever reason, even those $20, then you can go back to the drawing board and say, okay, how else can I ask for money?
It is one of those things, I think, where if you're when you're trying to make money off of the things that you create, it's not like there's not one model. There's ads, and there's Patreon, and there's selling T-shirts, and just like putting paywalls on articles, and like there's a million different ways that you have to like figure it out. It's not as straightforward as just selling a product.
Of course. Or finding that one person, one entity, a business, or okay, sorry.
No. Go ahead. I think we're getting a little lag there. It's probably the time zone delay. Kidding.
Yeah,
but
yeah. The dumb internet.
I want to ask you. Yeah. It's everybody in the whole world's on it all at the same time right now is the problem. So everything's slow. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your work at Madhead, though. What are some of the games that you've worked on? What was what is it like working in games?
For me, it's awesome. I really love it. I really enjoy it because I got my first computer when I was 7 years old. That was back in 1990. It was an IBM XT, for all you retro computer fans out there. And it had two colors. It had the screen graphic card that was all black and yellow. So it was like something from a hacking movie from the 1980s. And I loved it from the first moment. I was 7 years old, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is everything is in that box, literally." So I started playing games early on. A lot of games, especially strategies, narrative games. I love them and continued all my life. I still do. In Madhead, I started working, as I mentioned, as a narrative designer. So I'm basically writing games. I'm a script writer for games, and I'm working primarily so forth. Primarily, my work is hidden object puzzle adventures. So these are games that are these are basically casual adventures that are sold through Big Fish Games. The portal it's really big in the US, especially for the casual market segment. And it's the simplest way to see them is like if, for example, Fox Family or Fox Life, the channel, made adventure games. You know, so it's a little bit mystery, a little bit danger, a little bit romance, but all focused to a segment of casual gamers in their middle age group who really enjoy and love these games, but primarily play them for a kind of a sense of um, familiarity. You know, it's like sitcoms. You love sitcoms. Basically, most sitcoms are pretty similar to each other, but you still get a lot of enjoyment from them, and there's a huge market for them. So I work primarily in hidden puzzle adventure games, hidden object puzzle adventure games.
And it's an interesting comparison. I mean, you compared them to sitcoms. Uh, what what is it that you find that's so familiar about these types of games or sitcoms? Why is it that we crave that familiarity?
Uh, yeah, it's a really it's a valid and a good question, but one that the whole industry is having so much trouble figuring out, because you can move it through any other genre. For example, you can say for first-person shooters, which is a core gaming genre, why do people love them? Why do they continue to play them, even though they basically offer the same thing over and over? The differences are cosmetic; they're really small. For example, take any big battle royale free-to-play title on the planet. Um, PUBG, you can get Warzone, Apex Legends, and Fortnite. The differences are not that big, but we crave these things as much as casual adventure games, as much as sitcoms, because they push a certain number of buttons in our psyche emotionally, and they occupy us. They occupy us intellectually, and then provide all those, let's say, punches emotionally. So it's like these punches can be good or bad. They can be off or they can be spot on, but they always give it to us. You know, it's like looking at a car chase in a movie. It can be done completely terribly. It can really suck, but you're gonna still get some engagement from it. Chances are you're not going to ignore it completely. You're going to still look at it and say, wow, this really sucked. But then take something like the original, yeah, but take the original Gone in 60 Seconds, which has those insane car chases that were filmed like in actual traffic. And even 40 years on, you'll be, oh my God, this is amazing. I mean, this is a YouTube video, viral YouTube video in a form of a movie made in 71 or whenever Gone in 60 Seconds came out. So it's the same thing with games. They provide us with a certain type of entertainment that's also emotionally engaging. And it can be on a high level of quality or medium or low, but they always do it to us. It's never like a brochure for a cruise that you can just look at and completely ignore. If you're into it, if you're into sitcoms, if you're into gaming, first-person shooters, adventure games, casual games, you give it a shot. And sooner or later, you'll find something that you really love, then something you like less. Just like with sitcoms. Some are Arrested Developments, some are, I don't know, let's not mention them. Not Arrested Development, not as good.
We're getting towards the end of the program, and I like to ask everybody who comes on this, and this is like a total pivot question, but I like to ask everybody who comes on the same question to end with, which is, through everything you've ever done, your whole life, your work, all of it, what's the thing that's most important to you, that you most want to convey and tell other people?
That's an awesome question, and I need a second to think about it.
Everybody does. That's the point.
Yeah, it's a good one. I believe that ultimately everything we do is about meaningful connections in our personal lives, in our professional lives. So if we manage to create meaningful connections of any kind with anybody, with our audience, with our loved ones, with our friends, most importantly with our family, which is also a work, it's an effort. It's not something that comes naturally. If you disregard it, chances are it's not going to be as good as if you're working on it consciously. If you manage to connect with people and make those meaningful connections, you're okay. You can be successful or less so. You can get a lot of money or maybe not, but you did something that's, in the end, this is a more a longer version of saying it's all about love, but it kind of is, right? We define it differently, but without those meaningful connections, I look at it like that. If you don't make any meaningful connections, then what is it all about? It looks like a hollow victory to me in that case. Okay, you maybe got something, probably got something, but without those connections, where are you going to spend it? Whatever that's something you got is going to be. So yeah, I'd say connections with people. And I know I'm a psychologist, so I always probably revert back to that. But in my perspective, yeah, it is. In our professional life, creative life, and especially in our personal life, all about them connections.
I think that's a wonderful answer, because I couldn't agree more. I think connection is really kind of the basis of what it is to be human. Well, thank you so much, Ivica, for coming on the show. Again, that is Ivica Milaric, and the new book is The Pursuit of Micro Success. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much, Alex. Had a great time.